for joining us. I sent out a tweet, so I have my act together. This is the very first time that we are trying this in Zoom. So hopefully everything kind of works out, but it's a little experimental. For those of you who have joined us in previous sessions, we were using Crowdcast, which I thought was kind of cool because it has like fancy Q&A features and things, but it felt a little webinar-y, and pretty much every other project uses Zoom. So why should we be different? Linkerd is a very innovative project, but not when it comes to community meetings. We can be normal like everyone else. Hi, Thomas.
Why, hello.
Congratulations on figuring out Zoom technology.
I installed it, and I'm going to uninstall it when we're done.
for legal reasons?
They just have a reputation for not necessarily being security conscious.
I see. Well, I would like to send a special shout out to the CNCF for giving us this Zoom meeting room, which can hold up to 100 participants. There's only 72 contributors on the Linkerd 2 repo, so it should be fine. Yeah, so first thing to point out is we have this community meeting section in the README now that has a link to the Zoom thing, has a link to Google Calendar, so we have now an official Linkerd calendar that has these meetings in it, so please subscribe to that, share, like, and subscribe to my Google Calendar, and we're gonna basically throw away the meetup and the Crowdcast thing that we were using before, because I don't think we're gonna need them anymore. So the only way you're gonna be reminded about these events is either by having this calendar or by, I guess, me remembering to tweet about it. And then we're gonna keep all the meetings and record everything, put it up on YouTube, and basically try and be like a normal project. Alrighty, so here's what we got lined up for today. First, we are going to check in on Linkerd 2.6. We're going to nominate some Linkerd heroes of the month. Tarun's going to give us a sweet demo of distributed tracing with Linkerd. What? I didn't even think that was possible. And then Carol is going to join us for a traffic split UI, which has some cool stuff coming up in 2.6. And then, whoops, I don't think we have OpenFAS stuff. Sorry, that was last time. So I don't know, maybe we'll see a surprise demo from someone, and then we'll do Q&A. Sound good? Any objections? Tarun, objections?
I don't have any, so we can go, I guess.
Okay. And then, you know, the other thing that I kind of miss from Crowdcast is the chat window, and I'd like to see, how do I do this? Can I see the chat window? Oh, yes, I can. All right. All right, so I've got the chat window up. Yes, hi, Oliver. So in lieu of like the fancy Q&A and poll stuff, just, I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for asking, Oliver. Type your questions and things into chat, and I'll be keeping an eye on that, and I'll try and play the role of moderator. So with that, let's get started with Linkerd 2.6. Thomas and Oliver, I have heard allegations that Linkerd 2.6 is just around the corner and that it contains some amazing features. Do you care to confirm or deny those allegations?
Deny all the allegations.
Deny, okay.
No comment.
Is there a 2.6?
In your mind.
Do numbers numbers have meaning?
No, in my reality. 2.6 is coming out very, very soon. Don't get all of your hopes up, but probably next week. The banner feature for 2.6 is going to be exporting spans from the proxy if you want to enable that. In fact, that's going to be the demo that Tarun is showing off. So that's going to be super exciting. The other interesting big piece in 2.6 is a lot of folks have been running into Prometheus scale issues. Specifically, the dashboard is a little naive in how it treats Prometheus, and we've got a whole bunch of great changes to take care of that in 2.6.
I just Google searching thing identity with it doesn't look like they.
I think we need to mute Chris.
Yeah. I think I have the power to mute him if I hear more.
Or is it Alex? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so possibly next week, if all things go well, big ticket item, Thomas, you said was the distributed tracing spans.
Yep.
Emitted from the proxy and the dashboard improvements, especially reduced load on Prometheus.
Yeah, and there's been a bunch of other internal changes in that time frame as well. We've basically, we're redoing a bunch of the internals with how it communicates to the control plane so we can start to make that more reliable. We're not in 2.6, but in 2.7, we'll start supporting a connectivity between the proxy and the control plane as far as destination services and identity services. And we're really doing all the things to set up to make MTLS kind of through and through project. So while 2.6 is very focused around the kind of tracing aspects that we've just added, but there's a whole bunch of internals that will show up in 2.7 shortly after, hopefully.
All right, so I'll say lots of internal stuff in prep for a very MTLS focused 2.7.
Yep, and with that in mind, we've cut some scope on the 2.6 thing, so on the 2.6 release, so we can get it out quickly and completely. And then there'll be a bunch of other things that are kind of still in flight right now that we'll get in right after 2.6 lands, and we'll come out in the following edge and land in 2.7.
Okay, all right, great. So I know Tarun's going to give a demo about distributed tracing, but what seemed like a whole lot of work. Why was this so much work? Can't you just like emit some spans? How hard?
Thomas or Alex, do you want to cover that?
It is not that much work, to be honest, once you figure out the right pieces to use. The tracing ecosystem at the moment is a little bit in a upheaval, as I'm sure Tarun is uniquely aware of. The open census community is transferring over to an open telemetry community. It's all kind of in flux at the moment, and software supports specific types. So there's a whole bunch of moving targets between what headers you propagate and what software you interact with. And so it was a bit of a tough time to define more than anything else.
In fact, the protobuf that we have to depend on for open census is a big disclaimer that it should not be relied on or used anywhere. And so that's just kind of the state of the tracing ecosystem right now. But to help our case there, we've also done some investments on the TAP side, which is kind of Linkerde's version of non-distributed tracing. So we added a JSON output to the TAP command, which will make it about 1,000 times more parsable, and you may find some other bits of metadata showing up in TAP over the next couple of releases.
Awesome. And then on the dashboard improvements, like what's going on with that? How come anyone spent any energy on that?
So just by opening the dashboard in 2.5, you create about 45 RPS to Prometheus. As you can imagine, that is quite a bit of load, especially if you're on a larger cluster, because you end up having to go and put a ton of memory, a ton of series into memory. The primary reason for that is kind of twofold. One of them is the sidebar that you all know and love in the dashboard requires you to fetch all of the data for your entire cluster just so that we could show health next to it. Most folks don't expand the sidebar. And so we did a redesign on the sidebar that takes Prometheus's load from about 45 RPS down to 4, which is pretty awesome. And then the other bit was, for those of you who have experienced the joy of Ruby on Rails, I'm sure you're aware of N+1 queries, where you go write an active record and naively end up going and sending, you know, N queries just for each row of a list view. And so we were technically doing that on the Prometheus side, and Ivan's been working really hard to get that shrunk down as well.
Did you say, Thomas, did you say 45 RPS?
Yep, down to about 4 in the new dashboard branch.
Oh, and one thing that we actually spent a lot of time on in this past release, which is not going to show up for the people running things in Kubernetes, but will show up for you who are contributing, is that we moved all of our internal CI off of Travis onto GitHub Actions. And that was a very hastily emergency move we had to make as the Travis, and the old CI system was kind of hitting its limits, and Travis was having a bunch of outages. And so now we actually have a much, well, not perfectly stable, but a much more workable system that we can move forward with, and we've reduced a bunch of the CI time and flaking failures. So hopefully the contributors are happy, and if you hit any wrinkles, please let us know so we can fix those issues.
And in particular, I think we're doing a lot of unique things there around Kubernetes and clusters and Docker and hosts. And so I think we'll write up a blog post on that sooner rather than later. Siggy did some really, really awesome work there.
Yeah, basically because CNCF gives us hosted hardware that we don't have to share, we can use GitHub Actions basically as a controller that launches our tests in our own hardware, which makes it a lot more reliable and debuggable for us.
Okay, I have a commitment from Thomas to write a blog post written in the official minutes.
You have a commitment for me to go talk to Siggy about writing a blog post, yes.
Talk to someone about, let's say, try to convince someone to write a blog post. Okay. All right. And then, you know, the other thing that I saw, I guess maybe we'll come up to this in the next section too, but didn't we see the tail end of that long chain of PRs around cluster domain, custom cluster domains?
Yep.
Is that going to be in as part of 2.6?
It is in edges already.
And what does that mean? What is it?
It means that if you foolishly changed your cluster domain from cluster.local, you can use Linkerd on that.
Changed cluster domain from cluster.local. Linkerd now works. Okay. Why would you change your? This is like a Kubernetes setting, right?
It is a configuration setting as you build up your cluster.
Why would you want to change that?
Hypothetically, because you're interested in having different domains for different clusters.
Yeah,
so
if you want to be
running 2 clusters,
a global address space rather, right? So service.cluster.local is not, you can't name things outside of your cluster in that scheme. And so if you want to have service.cluster.myorg.com, this allows you to do that, which some organizations care about. And really, it's because AWS enables this flag by default for people to configure. And so a lot of people configure it and then run into Linkerd, which doesn't work with it. And so luckily, we had to do very little work to get this feature. A user submitted everything, and it was, I think, 4 or 5 PRs over the past few months. Really appreciate the work from Armin to bring that work in.
Okay, excellent. Anything else we want to talk about for 2.6?
We are now publishing a Helm chart, so that's a little bit easier. You don't need to just clone the repo anymore. And it's a part of Helm Hub, so once the team there figures out the UX around Helm Hub, it should be a easy, enjoyable experience. And there were a bunch of little bugs worked out on Helm in general. We've had some great external contributions. One just landed around being able to disable the proxy injector for kube system, so that if you're scaling your clusters to 0, you don't get in a wedged state. We also had node selectors, so now you can run Linkerd on mixed Windows Linux clusters, which is pretty cool. PS, that's not actual Windows support. Microsoft still needs to make Windows work before Linkerd can run on Windows containers, but it's moving in the right direction there.
I'm going to say one step closer to Windows support with, what did you call it? Node selectors?
Node selectors.
All right.
And also, the destination part is also another service now, so that they can be scaled individually.
Yep, that's a good call too, Julian.
What was that, the destination?
So the service that we use to do service discovery for the proxies has been part of the controller pod for a while. We split it out to help with scaling and visibility there.
Oh, this is unrelated to.
Totally unrelated to the Windows stuff.
Okay.
The Windows node selector, what that does today is make sure that if you have Windows nodes in your cluster, Linkerd never gets scheduled to those nodes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so that's like negative Windows support.
It makes it so that you can actually run Linkerd in a mixed cluster now.
Yeah, okay. Let me call this like step closer to mixed cluster support. Yeah, I'd love to get Windows support in here, but yeah. All right, cool. So that's, man, that's a ton of stuff. I know we talked about 2.7 very briefly and some of the stuff that Oliver hinted at, but do you want to give us a sneak peek of what we can expect for 2.7?
That's just telling everybody, spoiler alert, come on now.
Wow.
Yeah, what are we gonna talk about next month?
Yeah.
We'll talk about how it's all changed from what we said last time.
Are you trying to suggest that our priorities change on a semi-regular basis?
We adapt to the wants and needs of the Linkerd community.
Good call.
An open source project is necessarily a living, breathing entity.
Okay. So the focus for 2.7 is going to be MTLS, like Oliver said. We're kind of checking off all the lists of reasons, the caveats around MTLS, so that it's called mission no caveats. We'll call it that way. Little stuff like making the connections between Prometheus for scrapes become TLS, and hopefully getting TCP services to get automatically MTLS instead of just HTTP. Probably the biggest piece of all of that I'm really interested in, honestly, is making it so that you can audit that, and audit not just the connections inside your cluster, but the connections outside. So you'll be able to go and have a command that goes and says, these edges were not secured, you should probably go take a look at them. This is kind of a big part of our project goals of making everything incremental. The idea being put Linkerd in and then go audit and see how to make it better.
Yeah, okay. Cool. That'll be really nice.
I am.
Well, there is a big
looking forward
caveat to MTLS, honestly, and it's that it's not going. We can't enforce it mandatorily, right? So we'll be at a place where we can, if the proxy's on both sides and everything's working, we'll MTLS it and we'll document whether it's MTLS or why it wasn't, if it wasn't. but we are going to default to a fail open position, and that's going to be a slow step to going towards a fail close default. And I think that's going to take probably 3 or 4 stable releases, in all honesty.
Yep, I think you're right, and that's kind of our slow work towards that direction.
Yeah. Okay.
But we hope to really kind of lock down a bunch of the production-ready stories in terms of recommendations for cert rotation and kind of the checklist you need to be thinking about identity if you actually care about TLS and auditing these features. 2.7 will give you enough tooling to actually start solving real problems there, especially in terms of auditing and debugging. But we're going to, like as I said, it'll be a process to go into a more lockdown environment.
Okay, got it. All right. Well, we'll definitely talk more about 2.7 in next month's call as it becomes a little closer to a reality, and we'll have 2.6 under our belts. And then I'm going to paste in, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, and then let's talk about the Linkerd heroes. While we're doing that, I'll paste in Oliver's Helm chart links into these notes. Okay, so Linkerd official heroes of the month. Any nominations from anyone? You can nominate either by shouting something out or by typing it into chat.
Yeah, also forgot, like one of the feature would be, now the proxy injector is instrumented, like we can get the metrics out of proxy injector, or like how many pods did it inject, what all configuration they have. It's a good one.
Turing, you're saying that is a feature in 2.6?
Yeah.
All right, let me add that. Actually, do you have that doc open? If you could just make a suggestion on the doc directly. I don't have to type everything that way.
I don't have the link to the doc, sorry.
Let me
Chat.
paste it into chat. Everyone should have suggesting permissions. This is what I should have done in the beginning. It's crowdsource things. All right, so any suggestions for Linkerd Community Hero of the Month? I have a nomination, but I'm going to see if anyone else does.
I'm going to nominate Siggy because the work to fix our CI was, it was blocking everyone, and it was really painful for the whole project for a little while, and Siggy just jumped in and heroed that out. So huge thanks to Siggy.
All right, so Andrew Signer, official hero for
CI Apocalypse. Staving off the CI Apocalypse.
Apocalypse. Is the CI Apocalypse what we avoided?
Yep, we staved it off. Yeah.
Okay.
We were in the early throes.
Staving off the CI Apocalypse for like, I don't know, another year.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
A year is forever in the future. So,
Thomas, any nominations?
Oh. Mine would be Carol for the sidebar work, specifically because Prometheus is going to be thankful.
Okay, I'm adding that.
did you explain what was so wrong before, Thomas, when you were talking about the feature?
A little bit.
Basically,
I mean,
the whole sidebar would just load up metrics and success rates for everything, so it could draw a little colored dot next to each name, right? Was that what's going on?
yeah, exactly. Not only that, but every type as well. And so this goes back to that N+1. The dashboard would send off a single query that would get converted into 10 on the back end for Prometheus. And then also, because the dashboard was a little naive, the sidebar and the main pages wouldn't share the data. And so it would double, triple, or even quadruple the number of queries there.
Yeah, so this is what we get for giving Thomas and William the features they want, as we find out that we have big, scary performance issues there. But it's been good to get our arms around some of the stuff and get, we're working getting tracing into this path. Tarun will show some of that off, and really just getting our debuggability increased in our own control plane.
All right, I see a nomination from Charles as well, nominating Ivan for reducing the Prometheus resource usage. All right, add that to the list. And then my nomination once again is Armin for pushing the custom cluster domains all the way through. That was a ton of PRs to make that happen and he was very patient with the process.
Yeah, if you look at his GitHub, it's one of the few contributions he's done over that time period, and he really stuck with it. So I'm really appreciative of that.
All right, cool. So we've got Siggy, Carol, Ivan, and Armin. There's no prize for being a community hero, just recognition in this video.
Maybe a hat?
No, you don't even get a hat. Okay, so thanks everyone. We're about to turn things over to Tarun, but before we do that, actually no, let's do that. No more, let's take a break from looking at my face and we will look at Tarun's face for a distributed tracing demo. You ready, Tarun?
Yeah. Okay,
blow us away.
I'll try. So distributed tracing has been a major feature request since since long time. Even when I was at KubeCon, a lot of people asked me about the tracing stuff. When would they see the proxy spans on the Jaeger dashboard or whatever they use. So now now I have a local build of. So now let's explain what we'll see in the demo. First, we'll see the traces for the control plane. If you see the control plane, there are multiple components and there's Prometheus. So we need so we need a way to know what components are making what request to what all components. So we have those traces first. I worked on it and I'm trying to make it to this edge release. If not, it will come in the next major release. Also, now once we see the spans, the traces for the control plane, we'll then see the traces for the proxies. A major feature, the major feature request was to let users see the proxy spans. As proxy is involved in every request, it would be awesome for users to know how much time the proxy is taking, what it does, etc. So the proxy spans are very useful. At least that's my opinion. Alex worked on it. I'll try to show both of them. First, I'll start with the traces for the control plane. So first, I have another branch for the traces of the control plane. That's a PR that people could look at if they are interested. Now I have those images already built on the cluster, so I can directly apply that, install that version of the control plane. So I'll do a Linkerd install. So my tracing setup, the one we are using, I mean the whole team is using, is to have an OC collector that is like a agent that you can configure, where to spend spans, etc. In this case, we are asking it to send it to Jaeger, and then Jaeger is another deployment that is installed that will be installed on the cluster. Now, once we apply that, also the important thing to notify here is that the Jaeger the collector instance should also be injected by the proxy. I tried doing without proxy, but there was an error. It's because when I spoke to the team mentioned that it was because all the communication is secure. So it's important that the other side, the OC collector, is also injected. So once we have the control plane ready, looks like we have it. Now I'll create a port forward through the Jaeger instance. I'm opening the Jaeger dashboard. As you can see, we already have the spans coming up. If I select Linkerd destination, you get, these are old spans, I guess. Let us wait.
We can only see your terminal, Tarun. We can only see the terminal. Can't see anything else.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Now I guess you can.
Yeah.
Sorry. So now we'll see the. Now what I'll do is I'll expose the dashboard first, so that we can see those spans, like what all requests the dashboard is doing here, etc. So now if we see, now that we are interacting with the dashboard further interacts with the other internal services that it uses. So now if I go and see the spans for the Linkerd web dashboard, we should see a lot of spans coming up. Okay, like this is the previous, like before the demo I was trying the same too, so I think we can go with that. So as you can see, the Linkerd web dashboard interacts with the public API for the stats summary, and then the public API returns that. We can also see the Prometheus queries that happen. Try to show that. Now we can also tag based on the operations. Like if we go and see here for the top routes, etc., we can see the spans for it. As you can see here, the Linkerd web route is talking to the public API, and then the public API is doing some Prometheus queries. If we want to further drill down and see what all Prometheus queries it's doing, we can see that we can see the query also. As if we have this kind of observability on the control plane, I think we can further drill down and improve how many queries we are doing with the Prometheus instance. As this was a bug that is being raised very frequently, that we are overusing, like over querying Prometheus. By having this kind of observability, we can have more debuggability and solve those errors. Like before we make a release, as you can see, we have all the spans that are happening across. Now we see now we saw the spans for the control plane. Now let's go to, before that I'll once try deleting the tracing namespace, and I'll recreate the tracing components with injection. I think that should solve the issue that we have. As you can see, I have the tracing stuff here, the OC collector and the Jaeger instance. Let's create that once again. I'm doing this because as you can see here, I'm not able to see the latest spans here. These are the spans that like the demo I did before.
This is all the fun of doing a live demo.
Yeah, I'm guessing because you reinstalled the control plane, the identity stuff changed. So yeah, I think you're doing the right thing.
That could be one reason, yeah, true. So let's do that. Maybe I could see the proxy injector logs and see that like that is the case, but then I'll move further rather than doing that. So I'll do exclave. So now I copy pasted the tracing components, and then I use the Linkerd inject command to inject, and then I applied that. A lot of pipes here. I think once it runs, we'll be able to see the latest spans. Start refreshing. I have the Jaeger query here. Got it. So as you can see now that now these spans are now they're coming from the control plane directly. Like if you see also, the spans are a few seconds ago. I think if we further refresh, we'll see more of them coming up. So I would now we'll do a Linkerd check. As we know, like the Linkerd check like happens at the happens at the public API. So now that we ran a command, it sends a request to the Linkerd public API. Now if we see the public API instance, we could see that span here coming up. As you can see, it was a self check, and also the self check does a Prometheus query. As you can see, the query string, etc. Process start time something.
That's really cool.
And also like now as you mentioned, we were using a lot of Prometheus, right? So now if we generate a dashboard, now we'll see the real-time spans of the dashboard, that like the request that the dashboard makes. Now if I go to Linkerd web, if you see the traces, as we can see that there is a lot of requests happening. If we see the timestamp, there are a lot of requests in real time happening. If we can drill down to one of the query, rather than doing that, we'll do some queries here, and then we'll see the spans there. So we'll see the top routes first for Linkerd, for some of the resource like web, maybe. Okay.
So I'm sure some of you are starting to realize the tracing is, especially now that we have it in the control plane, is actually a pretty fun way to dig into how Linkerd's pieces fit together and call each other. So it's kind of a cool way to do some exploration and figure out, oh, this is how all of the pieces fit together.
Yeah, and can anyone guess why we have an API called TPS reports? Any guesses?
That's the sidebar, like the whole the stats, I guess. Sidebar.
Yeah, so the TPS report, it's just the stat endpoint that we call. So yeah, the sidebar is pulling that. But we called it stat initially, and then we found out that ad blockers block specifically requests to /API/stat. So we had to change the URI name, and that was the next best thing we could do.
I think TPS actually stands for something real instead of just
per second.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's it. It has nothing to do with the office space.
So as you can see, we can drill down all the. Now if we see if like how our routes, like how does the routes command work? We can see that the public API does the following Prometheus queries, etc. to get that data. We can drill down and see the whole pipeline, the whole life cycle of a request that we make to the control plane. And also we can see the destination side of things. As we know, the destination, the destination is the component that tells the routes for the proxies. The proxies use the gRPC client library to interact with the destination. As these are like the gRPC calls, their spans are directly sent like without much information. This is something I'll be working on next, like to add contextual information to that trace, like which service did it want to know about, like which endpoint did it want to know about, so that we can have further information about that. That will be coming up next. Now that we saw the things on the control plane, I'll move forward with the data plane proxies. For that, I'll show my setup first.
Hey, Tarun, I think we should pause here with the control plane and save the data plane for next time, just in the interest of time.
Sure, no problem.
What I really like about this, so thank you for giving that demo. What I really like about this is it fits right into the Linkerd ethos of everything that we do in the service mesh is something that should be inspectable and understandable by the operator. So just like we run the control plane on the data plane itself and give you the same tools, we want to give you the same tools to understand the control plane that we're giving you to understand your applications. So this fits right into that. Really cool.
Yeah, and I want to thank the CNCF project, or the CNCF, for sponsoring Tarun's work on all this, because it's been really, really valuable for us to be wiring all of this through, and it probably would have been prioritized otherwise.
Yeah, 100%.
One of the mentor from Ager is also here. I think he's in the call. JP. He's in the call. Yeah.
Approves. Hope he approves of the demo. Leave a thumbs up or a thumbs down if Tarun did a good job or a bad job.
It was a great job. Very nice job.
Good.
Thank you. All right, with that, why don't we turn it over to Carol, who's going to demo a little bit of the 2.6 UI changes around traffic splits. Carol, are you ready for action?
Yeah. Yeah, great job, Tarun. That was an awesome demo. So this should be really quick. When I talked in the Linkerd community meeting a couple months ago, I was talking about building out the traffic split CLI feature. And now for the last few edges, and that will be in the stable, the dashboard display is completely polished. So I'm gonna go through a quick demo of our Books app and running the Buoyant Books app with a traffic split. And then at the end, I can share a file so that you can do it on your own really quick. So let me work on this screen sharing. So I'm gonna, okay, just let me know, do you see my dashboard?
Yeah. Okay,
cool. All right, so right now I have the Linkerd dashboard going on, and here I go to the terminal. So I have Books app installed, and as you can see, everything's running well. And right now, this is the Books app without any traffic splits. And you can see that by looking for traffic splits, there are none going on. And then in the dashboard, there's nothing happening. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to apply a YAML file that you can see here that adds author's clone service. That's just exactly the same as the original author's service. And it's gonna add two traffic splits. One that's gonna split traffic 50-50 between the authors and the author's clone service. And then there's also a second traffic split called web app split that's going to split between the existing web app service and then a web app clone service that doesn't actually exist, because you can actually apply traffic splits that are going to services that don't exist yet, and it will still show. So I'm gonna open the terminal again and apply, let's see, Books app. Okay, Books app TS2. All right, and this is gonna have my traffic splits. So you can see when I'm doing kubectl get TS, I have those traffic splits showing. And let's see, you're gonna see these showing in the CLI, but what we're interested in today is the dashboard. So I'm gonna go over here. You can see them showing up in the dashboard. This is all of the traffic splits. So let's see author's split. I'm gonna click on this, and then, so what you see in this traffic split page, you see this is the Apex service, and then you have your two leaf services. And we're seeing the weight up here, the success rate, the RPS, and the P99. And here you have the accumulated success rate and the RPS. And then if you want to look down here, you also see the details of each leaf service, including the P50 and P95 latency. And you can also see, if I go back, this is the web app split that was actually doing 100% and 0%. And you can see, even though that web app clone service doesn't exist yet, you can see it's getting a weight 0, 0 RPS, success rate is not there, but you can see everything together. And the other thing you can do from the CLI is you can do watch Linkerd stat TS, and then you can have this going on your screen and just monitor over time. So that is the UI for traffic split. And let me, if I can share the URL. If you just go to our Books app repo, there's a file, the Books app traffic split YAML file. I can put this in the chat, but if you apply this, you have our Books app, those two traffic splits, and you can apply it and just in one line, be able to see those traffic splits in your CLI and the dashboard. And let me share that in the chat, if I can figure out how to do that. Well, I think maybe I need to stop sharing my screen and then I will share it in the chat. Does
Carol,
anyone have any questions?
Is this in the latest Edge?
Yes, this has been, Thomas probably knows, this has been in the last few edges. So yeah, you can play with it right now.
Yeah, cool. And does this add 45 RPS to Prometheus?
It adds 4,500 RPS. It's a great improvement.
And actually, so like this is a unique step forward here, where a lot of the data we pull together on the dashboard is only pulled together from Prometheus. And as Carol was showing here, we actually pull the traffic split resources and are able to talk about those concretely, even if the proxy isn't exporting those metrics yet. And so we're starting to use the Kubernetes API a lot more for these sorts of things, which is the right path forward.
That's really cool. Thank you, Carol, for showing that. Any questions from anyone? Want to just dump them into chat or shout them out? No one dares.
It's self-evident. There's nothing to ask.
Yeah, that's the problem with these UI demos where the UI is really polished. You need to have some like weird, complicated stuff in there to solicit questions.
Okay, I can ask a question. Carol, what did you learn while doing this feature? Anything fun or
Terrible.
anything new?
Any horrible secrets uncovered?
Yeah, well, and that's a really good question, and not being sarcastic, it was a really cool way to learn about traffic splits specifically, and I want to especially call out Alex on our team for being so great at thinking through both the UI with Thomas and I, but also being kind of the traffic split professor on staff, working with the SMI plans for traffic split. And it's just really fascinating. Traffic split, once you're learning about it, you kind of get into the whole Kubernetes services area of expertise as well. So yeah, it was a really cool project, and it's kind of exciting that people can use Linkerd to get this in motion and instantly know if something is working or not.
Yeah, as Carol learned, one of the favorite arguments at the office is what is a service? And so Carol walked right into that and came out the other side without too much mud. So good job.
Yeah, and overall I learned a service is a sandwich.
We're not touching that in this meeting.
That's for the after party. Okay, great. So we're just about to play a game of Stump the Maintainer. Thank you again, Carol, for being willing to demo.
This is a very easy game, I
before we
think.
do that, I have a couple commercial announcements, which is number one. Actually, this is kind of a terrible announcement. The CFP for KubeCon EU will open in a week. So if you have any Linkerd related content that you'd like to submit and maybe convince your organization to send you to Amsterdam and to join us there, then please think about what you want to do. And it will be closing. I think the CFP closes scant days after KubeCon.
The Friday after.
San Diego finishes. Yeah. So, you know, if you ever felt like you were on a treadmill or in some kind of service mesh related rat race, well, here you are.
And one caveat is that you cannot resubmit talks from prior KubeCon. So get creative.
Talks that were accepted.
Right.
Yeah.
Run Rot 13 on your abstracts, whatever you have to do.
Yeah, you can submit the same talk. If it gets rejected, you can just keep submitting it until finally they give in. The other thing I wanted to point out is Service Mesh Con. The schedule is up. So for those of you who will be joining us in San Diego, there's a co-located event the day before called Service Mesh Con. That has, where's the schedule? Program schedule, here we go. And there's some cool Linkerd content in here, starting with Risha Mars from the Linkerd team and Anna Kalin from Paybase. And then Alejandro, also a Linkerd contributor, will be talking about admission webhooks and some of the gory details of how we managed to get them to work in Linkerd. And then yours truly will be on some extremely boring panels at the end, which I highly encourage you to skip. But if you want to join us for the cool stuff, hope to see you there. Otherwise, there will be a Linkerd booth, and many of us will be hanging out there for the KubeCon proper in San Diego. So it would be really cool to meet you all face to face.
And I just want to recap some of the 2.6 stuff timing-wise. We do have the proxy side of the tracing in master as of today. That'll come out in this week's Edge. We're going to treat this week's Edge as a bit of an RC candidate, a release candidate for 2.6. And we'll be, so in the next week, we'll be polishing docs, etc., and just trying to get everything ship-shape to get a clean release out. So tracing won't be particularly testable until we have those docs written, but if you're intrepid, you might be able to figure it out. And then we'll be following, right after the release, we'll be merging a bunch of Tarun changes in and these follow-up things that'll show up in the following Edge after the release.
Great, thank you, Oliver. And then Carol has pasted in some step-by-step instructions for that traffic split demo into chat. So speaking of chat, now is your opportunity to stump Oliver, Thomas, Carol, and anyone else in the Linkerd project. Ask your hardest questions.
And if you can't stump us, you're not asking hard questions or you're not asking questions, basically.
You're not asking a real question,
yeah.
Unless you can't get an answer. We're going to sit here for 8 minutes of silence.
All right, let me think of what are the hardest Linkerd questions I can think of.
Yeah, you ask Thomas a really hard question, and then Thomas can ask you a really hard question.
Thomas, I don't want to put you on the spot for this,
but
I know you've been spending a lot of time kind of digging into the multi-cluster paradigm and how folks are doing this with Kubernetes and other service meshes, etc. Do you have any reports from the front lines?
Way to set me up for one of my wonderful rants.
I know.
The thing I think that's been the most fascinating to me about multi-cluster in particular is what it says about us as a community and an ecosystem. The thing I find interesting is if you go back 20 years, I don't think anyone was talking about having multi-data center kind of workloads. It wasn't multi-cluster because you stuck it in a rack and a colo, and you were so busy trying to keep that rack and colo up that you didn't have time to do anything else. And so I think that multi-cluster in particular, and if you pull the layers back, folks looking at global redundancy, is this awesome piece that's come out from clouds and Kubernetes. Folks who would normally have been spending all their time just trying to keep up a log aggregation system or Nagios, something like that, are now able to go spend time on the multi-cluster, which is fantastic. The downside to that is that there's almost no information on the internet about how to expose services in a globally redundant way. And so the thing that's been really interesting to me is to go look at how many demos, the little pieces of data that you can get from folks who've written blog posts and done demos are obviously naive folks who haven't spent very much time running it that way in the past. And so digging in, it's amazing because once you think about the primitives, William and I have kind of been putting a doc together on this. Once you think about the primitives, Kubernetes itself has all the primitives you need to make a super reliable, redundant system. And the service mesh, while it can help a little bit, isn't a required piece to any of that. In fact, I'd argue that unless you get the basics done correctly, you're just asking for pain because of too many layers of abstraction.
I thought the service mesh was a magic bullet that could be used to solve anything, including multi-cluster, multi-tenancy, and multi-data center.
Clearly, you've been reading your own blog posts.
I'm high on my own supply.
Well, I recently heard that service meshes make it so that running stateful workloads on Kubernetes is super easy. I think they solve all of the persistent volume issues and don't have any resource costs. So,
yeah, I think the non-snarky meta point here is that we want to continue to push a lot of this complexity down into Kubernetes and let there be good, consistent core APIs and primitives that define these terms, describe these things, and then figure out how the service mesh interacts with those primitives. It is not our mission in Linkerd to introduce a bunch of primitives that are Linkerd specific in any way.
It's using Linkerd is about applying best practices, and we're here to help you apply the best practices wherever the most important way to do that is. Again, one of the reasons why we've never actually gone and implemented ingress in Linkerd today is because the CNCF community has a bunch of amazing ingress controllers that are always going to be better than us. And so we want you to use the best practices there to make sure that your services have the best uptime, most reliability, and extremely secureness.
Yeah, and again, a lot of folks don't actually, they come into multi-cluster as this nice silver bullet thing and aren't thinking about what problems they want to solve. And organizations I've worked in previously, I've been in meetings where they say, we want multi-cluster, and you say, well, are you solving availability or locality or cost? And everyone kind of says, yeah, and those things are all in competition. So there are an array of solutions in that space, and we'll be laying into whatever the kind of community best practices are there.
I actually have a question for Tarun, which was suggested by an anonymous member, which is, what was the biggest challenge? You've been doing all this work to wire distributed tracing through the Linkerd control plane. What was the biggest challenge that you faced?
Mm-hmm. One of the challenge would be like checking the libraries, etc. As Thomas mentioned, the tracing space isn't very nice, very standardized, etc. It's a lot of chaos now. Like you can use a lot of things now. There are a lot of things for the same functionality. Maybe there's a lot of stuff going on in there. I think once they get stabilized, it will be better. But in this moment, I had a lot of time struggling understanding what things fit where. Like you have agents, collectors, like which one fits where, etc. It was a problem there.
Yeah, I've heard it described as every API is either deprecated or not ready for production. And
A lot of
just like we're going to Google.
Oh, how come we don't get to do that with Linkerd?
Because we try not to do that. And this is actually why folks have been asking us, William's been asking me for tracing for a year on this stuff, and our pushback has been largely around this, that like, tracing for whom? Everyone's tracing setup works maybe just for them and is not interoperable with other configurations. And so we've had to pick a very narrow set of configuration we support to start, so we can get feedback from you and see if that works or if there are other standards we should be focusing on. But it's a very messy, non-out-of-the-box experience for most folks. And it does require kind of deep those changes and things like that. So
it is that time.
Yeah, all right, great. So top of the hour, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm super interested in hearing your feedback about how Zoom is working for you and whether we should continue doing this and whether this was interesting, fun, boring, stupid. Find me on the Linkerd Slack and tell me your thoughts or shoot me tweets or email me emails or whatever it is. Let me know. Thanks everyone for joining. Special thank you to Carol and to Tarun for your demos. And we'll see you next month, same time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my Google Calendar. Bye-bye.